Hello folks, I hope you're having a great day today. Hey, today I want to take a look at Manly Wade Wellman's Straggler from Atlantis. It's actually in this collection that I picked up recently. I wanted to do a few more of his stories. It's a collection of short stories. I've done actually, I think, one or two of them for you already. That has a few different writers in them. It has all of his people that feature his hero, Kardios, as well as 5 short stories from him, a Lee Brackett story set in Mew, and then this other guy who has 3 or 4 stories in Lemuria set written in the 40s. Now, Manly Wade Wellman started writing in the 20s, was writing in the Pulp era, and wrote for a lot of other things too. But these stories were written in the later 70s. In fact, this story was written and published in 1977 in a book called Swords Against Darkness. This one has the other 5 stories that were published in the follow-ups to that collection: Swords Against Darkness 2, 3, Heroic Fantasy, Random 1, and Swords Against Darkness 4. The last of them was published in 79. So he wrote these 5 stories over the course of 3 years in the late 70s. Okay, so we'll be taking a look at the first one of these series that introduces the character of Kardios, who he is to you, and give you my quick little review thereof. So that way, if you're interested, you can go check him out. So basically what wound up happening is that Manly Wade Wellman believed that he had a really good idea for an Atlantean. But because Conan, back during the Pulp eras, for magazines like Weird Tales and so forth, but because Conan had a popular Atlantean already, and a lot of other people did too, it was felt that that was something that was already done and would be hard to sell to the audience at that time. So he kind of put that idea aside, and he wanted to come back to it later when he had a chance, once the idea would be fresh again. Now that was from the 30s to the 70s. That's a lot. 40 years. That's a long time. But the idea is that he has this character named Kardios, and Kardios is the last Atlantean. Atlantis has just been destroyed, and he has survived, and he's the final survivor. And he'll actually, at the beginning of the story, wake up having just the continent was just destroyed, and he's just waking up from it, which is an interesting perspective, because many stories that are set in Atlantis, or the Atlantis of the Pacific, Lemuria, typically are going to be set at the time that that place is available, right? You're going to see a story set in Atlantis is going to be on Atlantis. You know, when I was in 4th grade, I wrote a story called The Land That Once Was. It was a detective story in Atlantis. I wrote it for like my 4th grade class. And, again, it wasn't set by people after the destruction of Atlantis, right? It was set during Atlantis. And the same thing's true here with, I think, a lot of other things that are out there too. You have a number of these stories that are being set in Atlantis, like Hull in Conan, that are being set during Atlantis. So the idea, of course, having the person who has survived Atlantis and it's just been destroyed, I do agree with Manly Wade Wellman. It's an interesting narrative choice. It gives you a different, distinct character. Some other things are happening. There are some, it's a different take on the genre. So I agree that does have, I think, an interesting, different perspective to it. Although it still just winds up being a very similar story. But he's washing up on the shore of a place. He doesn't know who the people are. He sees he's waking up on the beach. He sees a big giant foot coming down beside him. It seems there's a giant reaching down to him, asking about him. And then he reaches over and punches the guy really hard to defend himself. Then he is kind of knocked out, and he wakes up again in this giant's camp. A bunch of other giants there too. They've been treating him for his wounds. They just gave him some wine to drink to help him get all stored up and so forth. They were just making sure he's okay. They weren't like trying to attack him or anything like that. And Kardios starts to threaten them too. I guess he's thinking that maybe they're trying to fatten him up for food, or they're trying to trick him, and they're not. They're genuinely interested in just making sure he's okay. And while Kardios never kind of apologizes for that, he never says, "Hey, I'm sorry for assuming that just because you're big giant people that you were going to try to attack me and defending myself or trying to punch you." He never actually does that. I do think that it's an interesting subversion of the trope by Manly Wade Wellman, and I wish that he had. Because he should have. The idea is, why are you attacking these guys? Why are you assuming they're trying to kill you? Why are you, continuing to be antagonistic towards someone who's trying to save you, and they brought you here and verbally trying to take them out. You're taunting them and such, and trying to bait them into battle. And why are you doing that? They're not trying to do that. But anyway, be that as it may, you introduced this tribe of giants that are out there on the beach, and they live up in the caves. And what's going to end up happening is that they're actually going to be trying to get help from Kardios. Kardios is a lot smaller than they are, and they have been threatened by this monster from the stars that arrived recently, and it's been eating all the local live things. It's in this cave, but it has a hole opening to it that's too small for giants, but which Kardios would be able to slip down into, and ideally he can go down there and kill this creature. And now they say it's a creature that it flows rather than moves. It changes shapes. It can be amorphous or not. It can eat things. It does have an unknown form. But they believe that they can take it out because it seems to be afraid of thorns, weapons. So it seems to have a physical presence at times. It's from the stars, supposedly. It doesn't look like anything that's domestic. So Kardios, once he sees it, believes them. Anyway, he agrees to help out. And then he does. End of the story. And again, that's my synopsis of it. I'll let you to it. It's about 25 pages long, so you can read it. Not that bad. I read it in about 45 minutes. Just finished it actually just before I came over here and wanted to record it, so it'd be fresh in my mind for you, and thus my kind of thoughts and takeaways. It is kind of a traditional sort of sword and sorcery story. It has a little sorcery, but not much. It's really more just swords. As is typical for the genre, it doesn't have a lot of magic. It's really more about the fighting and that sort of thing. And although a creature falling from the stars is interesting and coming down, riding a sort of sky chariot down to the ground, it actually reminds me of a Clark Ashton Smith short story that's set in Zothic that I've already reviewed for you. And as a part of that series, Clark Ashton Smith has this demon who rides down from the stars in order to help out and be an ally to this dark, evil magician who used to live a long time ago. After the magician died, the evil demon was imprisoned because it couldn't be killed, and it will be accidentally released as a part of the story. And now you got to deal with this nasty demon that rode down from the stars. This idea of this star-riding creatures in your fiction that's fantasy-based rather than science-fiction-based, or horror or something else like that. So it's an interesting call. It does have this sort of mythic, giant narrative feel to me when you play into that place, which I do enjoy here. It also felt a little bit like The Color Out of Space. It seemed to have colors and descriptions that weren't the case. A meteorite falling from the sky that has this sort of darkness to it that you have to deal with. Only in this case, you deal with it by slicing it with your sword, rather than, which is more of a sword and sorcery style of writing. But anyway, there it is. It's a solid story. It's been collected for the first time in this collection here. I'll link you to that collection below so you can get a chance to read it, and let me know what you think about it. And there's also in some other, it was initially published in '77 in Swords Against Devilry, so you can also check it out there if you're interested in reading it more. So what do you think? Have you read his short stories in this series, the 5 Kardios stories? Have you read this specific one? I'm happy to engage you with them more. What do you think about it? Do you agree or disagree with my take on it? Happy to engage you with it further in the comments below. I also try to keep my synopses relatively spoiler free when I can, and since my review of the story doesn't go deep into it, I was very light this time, but if you want to talk about any of the specific story elements, I'm also happy to do that with you too. And hey, if you like this video, please feel free to hit that subscribe button, because there's going to be so many more of these sorts of reviews of classics of science fiction, fantasy, and horror. Yesterday I reviewed a science fiction novel from 1820, and today I'm reviewing a 1820, and today I'm reviewing a fantasy short story from 1977. So we're going all over the place for the stories for this channel that are in horror, science fiction, and fantasy, and this definitely fits right on into that. And it's been a part of my reading of a lot of mainly Wade Wellman stuff more recently. So anyway, there you are. And hey, if you watch this video all the way to the end, I just want to thank you. You took some time out of your day and spent it with me. We all have such busy days, busy lives, and so many things happening. So the fact that you spent this time with me, That's very humbling, and I appreciate that. So thanks again, and have a good day.